I'm Mark Abkowitz. I'm on the faculty in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and I also am the director of the Vanderbilt Center for Environmental Management Studies. We specialize in a number of things related to national disasters. They include infrastructure protection, risk assessment, and community resilience. Harvey and Irma happening in such rapid succession, I think, are an indication of what could be in the future. We've been learning a little bit each time something like this happens. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but sometimes it takes a catastrophe of a certain scale for people to wake up and say, we need to do something about that. I'm a pretty strong believer in fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And I think that adage goes a long way in looking at what do you do after an event. We're talking hurricanes now, but it could be tornadoes, it could be wildfires, earthquakes, whatever it might be. The question really comes up as to if we had things the way they were and they suffered the level of catastrophic impact that they did, what's the reasoning behind going back and putting it back exactly the way it was before? The problem is one where we have to decide where our societal values are. And as much as developers and tourists would love to be right on the beach, if it's safer in the long run to put these structures further back, we call them setbacks, and be able to put in better protection in that setback area, then the building will be there for a lot longer. The question is whether tourists are willing to, walk a quarter mile on a boardwalk from their, hotel entrance to the beach. We can put back in natural barriers, mangroves, barrier islands, things of these nature. So there's a lot of opportunities to both be smarter about where we build and to also make better use of the land where we don't build. What we have to do, though, is we're such an impulse and immediate reaction society. The idea of spending anything, even if it's a little, when you have other things that you think are more important, you just keep kicking that can down the road, and then you end up with the results of Harvey and Irma, and people then sit there and go, gosh, maybe I should have done something differently back then. Hindsight is 20/20, unfortunately. We have a tendency to believe that technologically, since we are such a technological society, that the infrastructure has been built up to a certain standard to withstand these kinds of things. And unfortunately, our infrastructure, in a lot of cases, in dams and bridges and so forth, are over 50 years old when their design life was for not more than that. Oftentimes they weren't built exactly to design standards even then. So from an infrastructure standpoint, there's certainly design standards that we should improve upon. There's no reason why we shouldn't require new buildings or rebuild buildings to be built to a higher wind standard. Not all that different from what San Francisco does nowadays to require new construction to be built to higher standards for earthquakes of greater magnitude. There's also the opportunity to build new buildings on stilts where the elevation between ground level and the ground floor is much higher than the type of storm surge that you would expect under worst case scenarios. We also have over 6 million people that are without power right now in Florida, and some of that can be contributed to the fact that our electric grid and our power, the location of our power is often at ground level, and we can elevate a lot of those lines as well. But the other thing that's happening too is when we do build, we're basically narrowing the opportunities for where water can flow. And so consequently, we end up having more water accumulating in fewer places and oftentimes coming at a much more rapid pace because of the way that everything is draining. And that, I think, was Houston's biggest problem, is that it's an area that's well known to be heavily concrete and asphalted, if that's a verb. And as a result, there was very little places for the water to go, and so it just kept accumulating where it could accumulate. I honestly feel that the communities are the ones that have most control over what happens within their jurisdiction, and they have the opportunity to empower their residents in ways that are really much harder to do at a state or regional or federal level. And so consequently, I think a lot of pressure, if that's the right word, scrutiny maybe, should be placed on the zoning boards. They are the ones that allow developers to build. And if they're allowing developers to build in hazardous places, putting basically the opportunity for tax revenue over personal safety, then shame on them. And someone has to hold them to task.